So just to give you a little bit of background while people are joining. So the NIHR funded 15 applied research collaborations, or ARCs, between October 2019 to September 2024, which has now been extended to March 2026. And they're all about essentially conducting applied health and social care research, but importantly undertaking research where that research is needed and across a range of themes and topics, one of which has been palliative and end-of-life care. So NIHR also wanted to see some cross-ARC leaderships on some of those themes, and there is one for palliative and end-of-life care, but it's important that we all remember that this is an unfunded collaboration, so we're very grateful to the contributions that everybody from ARC and others puts into this. And this national NIHR ARC Palliative and End-of-Life Care leadership is co-led by Professor Irene Higginson from the South London ARC and myself from the East of England ARC from October this year. Previously, it was led by Irene and by Professor Stephen Barclay between 2019 and 2024. And we're very grateful for Stephen's input. It's also fantastically supported by Mev Hokaglu, who's a postdoctoral research associate for the South London ARC, and she's supporting the national leadership activities. And there are 4 key functions for this collaboration. First is to drive collaboration, increasing collaborative working across ARCs, improving efficiency and research impact. Secondly, to maximise that impact by partnering with the wider NIHR infrastructure, NHS England and others to maximise research impact. Thirdly, to deliver national impact by providing strategic direction, identifying opportunities to improve national practice and implement research at scale. And fourthly, to provide expert advice to Department of Health and Social Care and NIHR using the expertise of the ARC. And we've launched this new webinar series really to help bolster the first 3 of these. And we've identified key topics for this first and a second webinar that we're planning for December, which we'll tell you about at the end. But we'd also really like to hear your ideas or offers to present at these webinars from 2025 onwards. And again, we'll give you an opportunity at the end to share any ideas or thoughts you have on that. So just to briefly introduce our speakers for today, we are really delighted to be joined by Dr. Amy Gaddoud, who is Senior Lecturer in Palliative Medicine at Lancaster. She's also the first National Palliative Care Lead for the NIHR Research Delivery Network, and works as an honorary community consultant in palliative medicine at Trinity Hospice and Blackpool Teaching Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. So Amy's going to start us off, then we're going to hand over to Professor Andrew Davis, who's Professor of Palliative Medicine at Trinity College Dublin, University College Dublin and Our Lady's Hospice in Dublin. And he's joined by Melanie Waghorn, who is the Senior Research Nurse and Lead Research Nurse for the Chelsea 2 trial. So we're looking forward to some fantastic presentations about recruitment and then a Q&A session following on from that. So I'm going to hand over now to Amy, who's going to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Morag, and thank you for the invitation to speak. Just want to check the slides are working okay. Me and Teams don't always get on. Fantastic. So it's great. So I've had the full introduction here, but I'm really here in my role as the new Research Delivery Network Palliative Care Lead. And when I say new, I mean new. It's day 7 for this network. So because of that, some of this talk is going to be very much around structure and process, but really what I want to commend to you that this is a really exciting opportunity for palliative care research. With this new research delivery network, we really are in a strong place to be able to support palliative care and palliative care across all settings, which is really exciting. So I'm going to introduce myself and my motivations, talk quite a lot about the research delivery network and signpost you some resources, and then summarise and actually invite you to get involved in this new network. So who am I? So I have multiple hats like many people. So I am a consultant in palliative care in Blackpool in the community, and I also have an academic role at Lancaster University, and as I say, in the new National Palliative Care Specialty Lead for the Research Delivery Unit. And then I take a role within my university of training of doctors, academic doctors of the future. So first about my clinical role is in Blackpool. We had a very exciting day last week where we formally became a university hospice. We signed a memorandum of understanding. We've been working a long time with Lancaster University with training research, and that was all a very exciting day. But the other side really is quite a challenging role that I have. We have real areas of deprivation in Blackpool. We also have a lot of elderly patients in our area. These are challenges. I really enjoy these challenges, but I'm certainly not saying that I work in an ivory tower. I work near Blackpool Tower rather than an ivory tower. So I understand what it's like to be a clinician working at the coalface, and I know we're trying to do research in and among everything else. And that's why I'm really excited about the research delivery network, because it's a way of being able to support research and having the proper infrastructure rather than us doing it alongside everything else that we're doing. So just to start, what is the NIHR? I mean, one way of describing the NIHR is it's the research arm of the NHS. So very much like when we work clinically, we wouldn't dream of not being integrating in with our NHS colleagues. It's the same as when we're doing research. We really need to be thinking about how we can work with the NIHR and equally how the NIHR can work with us. So the mission statement is quite clear. It's about improving the health of the wealth of the nation through research. So I mean, I think the health, I mean, obviously that's in the broadest terms, including palliative care, is not controversial, but I think the wealth part is quite interesting. And actually quite a lot of the NIHR mission is to improve bringing finances into the NHS and also into the wider economy. The broader, then it splits into the mission to broader things, which I haven't got time to go in today, but I would commend you to have a look, if you haven't looked recently, at the NIHR website and have a look and see what areas might be of interest to you. There's a lot of emphasis on training of staff at all different grades, all different interests in research, so I would commend the training to you. So focusing initially on the research delivery network. So this was a proposed structure and actually is the structure at the moment. So we start off at the top of the triangle. We've got a national picture, and so I'm leading for palliative care. And then there'll also be settings. I'll talk about that separately. And then we're going to have some NHS regional leads, and I'll show that on the next graph. And actually, the structure of those have not yet been fully decided, but that's another opportunity for palliative care to be involved. And then we'll also have regional palliative care leads in each region. Some of those have been appointed and some of those have not yet been appointed. So that's a real opportunity for people to get involved. These slides are more than happy for them to be circulated. I know, a bit of noise there. More than happy for them circulated, and have a look at that YouTube video that describes the structure. And it's just a couple of minutes long to have a look at that. This is quite a busy slide, so I wouldn't expect you to look up all of this. So we've always, in the previous CRM, there's always been specialty leads. And the important thing to notice is previously palliative care wasn't a specialty. So this new structure, we now have palliative care as a separate specialty. It was previously a subgroup of cancer, which, as you can imagine, could cause difficulties. So we now have palliative care as a separate structure. The other thing that's really interesting, really exciting for palliative care is we have this new structure of settings leads. As many of you are aware, a lot of research happens in hospital, but that's not where the patients or the participants more generally in research are. And so now it's very much still focusing on hospital, but very much focusing on out of hospital settings. So have a community setting, primary care setting, hospital setting still, and residential, which is led by Sandra Prue, who I'm working very closely with. And residential includes care homes and hospices. So it's really now thinking about the different settings and the challenges of doing research in different settings and how we can overcome them, rather than putting this hospital model into research into other areas. So I really think this is really exciting for palliative care research. So this is just a little bit of geography. This is a bit that I'm not very good at, so I've had to learn about the geography of different places, especially when I start saying southwest central. I think what cities are in there, so I've had to learn it. So this is how the network is split up. Some of them will be similar to your CRNs. Some of them there might be a bit of a change. So for example, in the northwest, which obviously I know best, we were split into northwest coast and then the rest of the northwest, but now we've been joined together as northwest. So just to be aware of what your local area areas is, and to be aware of that for your own area. As I say, just be a little bit patient because they are on, it's day 7 today for this new network. So what is the RDN to do? So a lot of it, some of it will be quite similar to the CRN. So it's very much, so many of you, we're going to talk about the Chelsea study next, and many of you being involved in the Chelsea study might well have had a CRN nurse supporting you, so they will still continue to do that. But I think what's really exciting is this second part, to increase the capacity and capability of research infrastructure for the future. So for hospices that are less used to doing research, even my hospice where we are quite used to doing research, we still have an awful lot to do to increase capacity and capability in the future. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting with the new structures and processes. This is something I've been involved with when we're part of the Northwest Coast. We've got some money from the NIHR to have a capacity building collaboration that ran for about 18 months. We've got some funding to keep that going at the moment. And so this is specifically for hospices, and we're very aware obviously that research is not just in hospices, but it gives you some ideas, some small videos done by various different people, experts in different areas, and about how to set up a study right through to the dissemination of a study. So I commend that site to you. Just have a look through, see what's interesting to you. If you don't work in a hospice, obviously some of it still will be really relevant and important to have a look at. Just a very short, just to say, I mentioned at the beginning that the obviously this webinar is about recruitment and how we can support with the recruitment. So a lot of that was supporting with the research nurses and that side of supporting recruitment. To conclude, I think there really are, this really is an exciting time for palliative care research with this new network having named as a specialty, and I think this settings leads as well, because we work across all areas, don't we, of the NHS and beyond, really gives that opportunity. And it will build on the clinical research network. So I know many of you will probably have good relations with your clinical research network, so that even though it's a change, it's still, you'll still have the good infrastructure from those as it's moved over now to the research delivery network. Please make contact with your regional specialty and residential settings lead as they're appointed, or if they've not yet been appointed, maybe think about applying, or if you don't want to apply, maybe nudge and encourage someone else, because the opportunity is here for the specialty, but we need people to apply for these posts. And then as the NHS region-based leads, and these are just called NHS region-based leads because that's the region, like the Northwest. You don't have to work in the NHS to apply for those. They'll be coming through as they come. And I say the final thing is just have a look at the NIHR website and the wider resources that are available, and take those opportunities as they come. So thank you very much. I'm going to hold off questions till the end because we'll have plenty of time for questions. I went through that quite quickly, so we can have lots of time for discussion. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Amy. That was very efficient. So I'm going to hand over now to Andrew and Melanie, who are going to tell us all about the Chelsea 2 trial.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to trial. And as already been mentioned, Mel is the lead research nurse on this trial. So why is it called Chelsea? So it's called Chelsea for the reason you can see here. Actually, when we first put in the application for the feasibility study, we had to submit it by lunchtime, and the R&D at the University of Surrey said you have to have an acronym. We didn't have an acronym at the time. So we came up with Chelsea, and it had nothing to do with the fact that I support Chelsea Football Club. It just happened to be that the letters match. So that's why it's called Chelsea. And I suppose I've been interested in clinically assisted hydration ever since I started in palliative care. It's a controversial topic. When I came into palliative care, it was very much, we don't get fluids at the end of life. That's a bad thing to do. And the people in hospital are doing the wrong thing. And I couldn't quite understand the logic because, as you're all well aware, that we're constantly losing fluid, and our bodies are set up to replace that fluid. You become a little bit dehydrated, you get thirsty, you drink to replace the fluid that's missing. And although obviously physiology changes at the end of life, patients continue to lose fluid. And so for patients who don't drink and survive for a reasonable length of time, they are going to get dehydrated and potentially going to have problems related to dehydration. So you'd have thought that with such an important clinical problem, a problem that causes constant concerns, distress to patients and particularly relatives, and in fact is one of the sort of things that were highlighted in the Neuberger review of the LCP, that there'd be a huge amount of evidence. Well, unfortunately, there isn't. So this is the updated Cochrane review that was published, I think it was last year. And like most Cochrane reviews in palliative care, which is why we need to increase research, there's not very much evidence. And the evidence that there is really poor. And in terms of clinically assisted hydration, there are actually only 4 studies. So the bottom one is our original feasibility study, which included 200 patients. But you can see that before that, the number of patients recruited was disappointingly small. And in the last, or in the Bruera studies, you can see that they didn't even recruit to their sample size. And what's really important about these studies as well is that all of the 3 initial studies all included people who were dehydrated, and the intervention was 1 litre of fluid a day. So that's not enough fluid to hydrate a dehydrated person, and it's not enough fluid to maintain hydration in a normal human being unless they're less than 48 kilograms in weight. So none of the previous studies actually addressed the issue about whether hydration improves symptoms, problems in people who are dehydrated, or in people who are hydrated prevents the development of problems. So that's why we set up the original Chelsea 1 study and now are running the Chelsea 2 trial. Just to highlight really, and this is the sort of generic issues about why we don't have any evidence. The population is challenging in terms of doing research, but actually I would say it's not that challenging. What we have to do is we have to come up with designs that actually are appropriate for our patient population. There's the issue of consent, but again, there are ways around that process, and most of the patients who've been recruited to the Chelsea 2 trial don't have capacity. So most of the patients, the next of kin, the so-called personal consultee, has agreed that the patient can go into the study. And then there's this issue about who collects the data, and does the research activity actually interfere with clinical care? So we took a long time to think about what data we needed to collect, and the data is collected by the clinical nurses on the units that take part. And essentially, we're just asking them to collect the normal data that they would as part of their day-to-day activities. I think there's still a problem within palliative care about nihilism, i.e., okay, you can't do research, it's impossible to do. That's just clearly not true. There's still an issue about gatekeeping, that we shouldn't be doing research in palliative care, and we found that in the Chelsea 2 trial. And interestingly, it's not necessarily the older members of staff. Some of the new junior doctors have been the most vocal in terms of not wanting to be involved in the study. And one of the big issues in palliative care research is this perception that good enough is good enough. That, we're all wonderful, the care we give is amazing, so why do we need to do research? So, as I said, we did a feasibility study, published 6 years ago now, This was funded by Research for Patient Benefit, and it achieved all of its predefined criteria for success. And we were assured that having got the original funding from RFPB and that we met our criteria for success, that getting funding for the definitive study would not be a problem. Well, we were misled, and it was a problem. And we applied multiple times to multiple agencies, including HTA, and we were turned down. And on the last attempt, we resubmitted. The protocol was exactly the same. Everything was exactly the same. And this time we got funding. So your funding is really dependent on who's reviewing the proposal. So it's cluster randomized trial. So the sites are randomized to the intervention, not the patients, and that's really important. And so the interventions should become the standard of care at the sites. And there's two arms. Arm A is just standard end of life care. Arm B is standard end of life care plus clinically assisted hydration, if it's appropriate for the individual patient. I've already talked about consent. So the patients can consent. The personal consultees next of kin can agree that the patient can go into the study. And if there's no personal consultee, then each site has so-called study guardian who can similarly agree that the patient can go into the study. And what's really important about this study, and it's why we came up with a cluster randomized trial, partly is actually the patients are not consenting to having fluids or not having fluids. They're consenting to have the standard treatment of their intervention and allowing the data that's routinely collected by the nurses to be analysed. So this was the grand plan. Would take 2 years to recruit 1,600 participants from 80 sites. Plan to recruit across the whole of the UK and to recruit patients from hospital and hospice.
Right.
So as of the end of last month,
and it said this meeting has been cancelled or so. I'm writing the emails and it's cancelled, so I had to go back find the original email.
Can you put your microphone on mute, please?
Okay, so as of the 30th of September, so we're 23 months into recruitment. We recruited 1,412 participants, which is 7 times as many as in the feasibility study. And it's about 10 times more than all of the other participants that have been recruited to similar randomized controlled trials. We've actually opened 100 sites, although 91 of them are actually actively recruiting or have recruited. We couldn't open sites in Northern Ireland because of issues about the intervention, which I'll talk about in a minute. And you can see the breakdown of the 91 sites. So 79 of the sites are hospices, the other 12 are hospitals. So we don't have any data on the primary endpoint yet, for obvious reasons. The Data Monitoring and Ethics Committee have reviewed particularly the completion data in terms of what's collected and the adverse events. And as you can see there, we've had a relatively small number of withdrawals, a relatively small number of adverse events, mainly in the fluid arm, and the sort of things you would expect: worsening of peripheral edema, worsening of ascites, and no serious adverse events. So our independent NIHR appointed DMEC and trial steering committee are happy. So I'm going to hand you over to Mel, and Mel's going to tell you how we managed to get to where we are so far.
Right. Well, most people, if they've applied for a research grant and then they get told they're successful, they're really excited and really happy, which both me and Andrew were. But my excitement and happiness only lasted for about 10 minutes because suddenly it dawned on to me that we got to deliver this. We got to produce the data from this study. I looked at it and I went, I've got to find 80 sites, mainly in hospices, though some will be research experienced, most are going to be research naive. So a lot of these sites won't know about clinical governance and research regulation, GCP, or even have a research CV. So how did we get these sites up and running? The easy answer was collaboration support. And through every process of this study, we've had to collaborate and we've had to support. So thinking about, we had to find 80 sites. So we collaborated with the NIHR, Hospice UK, Health and Care Wales, Health Boards in Scotland, Marie Curie, Sue Ryder. We used all these research resources to send out expressions of interest. Now, finding 80 sites when I first thought it, I thought it was going to be really, really difficult. It wasn't. At the start, we had 130 expressions of interest, and those expressions of interest are still coming in. Then we're thinking about site setup and governance and regulatory issues. We collaborated. We got the CTU, we got RIGO at the University of Surrey, we got the NHS, we collaborated with the R&Ds. We also, again, collaborated with the NIHR. They had got a Learn Hub. We sent all sites and researchers to the Learn Hub to learn about GCP, learn about consenting patients with lacking capacity. We used that resource. And then how did we support these research naive sites? We had the first spot was site initiation visits. To date, we've done 97 site initiation visits. 94 of those have been face-to-face, and this was a very conscious decision, and we pushed for this. Most of these sites are research naive, so we wanted to go face-to-face, so the sites understood about the trial, the processes, and especially what is expected of them. We also wanted to build up some trust, and we wanted to collaborate with them. So again, that was really good. And the idea was if we collaborated well, then our data in the end would be nice data. They would collect good data for us and they would be happy to contact us. One of the things we've got to point out here, the NIHR direct delivery teams supported most of our sites through the process of setup and recruitment. They had, without this team, Chelsea wouldn't have recruited so well. So they go out, they're supporting the PIs and the researchers if they're naive or if they're experienced on trial management, how to recruit, consenting process and transcribing. They have been absolutely amazing, and that's across all regions and England and Wales. Other ways we're supporting sites, we are supporting sites that, so once they know this, there's 2 phone numbers, they can contact us at any time. We aim to answer all calls within an hour. We're doing pretty well at that. So the calls could be an eligibility check, or I've had calls where, Mel, I've not recruited before, it's first time, can you talk me through it? But we're very happy to do that. And we always get, oh, it's a stupid question. No question is stupid. We're happy for you to ask that. Sites can contact us by email. We've got a study newsletter. Now, the newsletter goes out regularly and we try and update it on what issues we found from monitoring and regular from that. The website has been brilliant. The website has got learning resources, interviews with carers who have taken part in the study. Other sites can see what other sites in the region are doing or what we're doing nationally. So, and the website has got all up-to-date documentation on it. One thing we did try and we stopped doing, we did do what we call drop-in sessions. These are drop-in sessions for Arm A and Arm B, and we've done those independently so that people could come aboard and ask us questions. Both me and Andrew attended these. We didn't do it for too long because we found that the same people were turning up for the drop-in sessions and sites weren't really getting a lot out of it. And sometimes advice was discussed about which wasn't correct. So we sort of pulled the drop-in sessions. We also have done site monitoring visits. So far, we have monitored 81 sites. Now, monitoring takes over 2 days. And when I say to sites, I'm going to go and monitor them, they usually get quite nervous, the PIs. Have we done it correctly? How's things going? But by the end of the 2 days, they've usually got reassured and found positivity. So what they've done really good, we highlight, and how we can improve things, we've done it. And whilst monitoring, we've shown that, you know, the face-to-face SIVs have been well worth the effort because the data we're collecting has been good and how the sites are running the studies mainly has been good. We are supporting the associate PI scheme. We've had a lot of PIs going through. Sites have sent multiple PIs, associate PIs through the scheme. I've got really positive feedback from that as well. Andrew, could you turn to the next one? Okay, so what issues have we had? Well, the first thing we've got to say is the lack of experience and the lack of clinicians' time to support the study. A lot of my clinicians and PIs are doing this on top of their normal job. So to find the time, it's really difficult. Now, when you set a study up in the NHS, we've got very clear time limits. What you've got, you're going to put in you get study information pack, you've got to have the SIV, you've got to be open, you've got to recruit, very strict time limits. In the community, it hasn't been that. And sometimes the lack of experience and lack of time has slowed that down. So setting up some sites was a lot slower than we would hope. Also, that some hospices don't open all their beds. They have reduced their bed capacity to 4, maybe 5 beds. That has happened different sites during the recruitment process. But one thing that's coming in now that is quite concerning is the financial difficulty, and some hospices are now laying off staff. I've got one hospice that is laying off 50% of its staff, and another one who's got to lay off 40 staff. So that is now going to start having an impact. So we've got to be aware of that. Other things that have an impact, if the PI is not on leave or pushing the study, when we got summer holidays, Easter holidays, Christmas holidays, we notice there's always a dip in recruitment. So what can we do for that? We step in and sort of contact the associate PIs, sub-PIs, or the research team, say, we'll support you when your PI's away. If you've got any questions, still recruit. If you've got any questions, just give us a call. What Andrew mentioned earlier, in Northern Ireland, they have had difficulties with or issues with using dextrose saline, which come out, and they decided they weren't going to take part in the study. And also a couple of sites in hospices in England have also had difficulty accessing dextrose saline. Remember, these hospices haven't got the support of the NHS as well, and they have to their own pharmacy. One big thing that is being a challenge, people's beliefs, or Andrew said earlier, gatekeeping. So a lot of relatives will feel if we're putting up fluids on their relative, we're going to extend life. So that has come back. Also, as Andrew said, gatekeeping of doctors. So one site said to me, some of their doctors are always finding an exclusion criteria, so they can't recruit. So they're gatekeeping that way. And also some nurses, they sort of put up the fluids and then just decide to take the fluids down. You know, they're saying the patient's getting chesty, so they take the fluids down. That's fine, and we haven't got a problem with that. But if they take the fluids down, someone needs to get a stethoscope and see if it is an issue or if the fluids can go back up. So those are the problems we had, and we stepped in and done bits to support the study and sites, and they're supporting themselves. Andrew, the next slide. So as you can see, we're heading for the finishing line. At the moment, Andrew says, I told you we've recruited 1,412 patients. I imagine it's a few more now. We've extended recruitment for varying reasons till the end of February 2025. And most of our sites have done really well. So what we've done, we've created, we've got 91 sites research ready. They've got their governance in place, and they've got everything in place, and they've got some experience behind them. What we need now is to get them to have follow-on studies so they can use that experience, because if they don't use it, they're going to lose it, and then someone else will have to come along and do it again. That's the end of my study.
Thanks, Mel. And just wanted to just acknowledge a few people. You can see that up there, the CTU team in particular, extended members of the trial team, the TSC and the DMEC, and obviously all the PIs, the clinical staff at the sites, and the patients and the carers. I think that's it. Stop sharing.
Fantastic. Thank you both so much.